Great. Welcome, everybody. And I'd have to say, I probably self-volunteered for this too, because I was in, if you are considering a telemedicine program, I was kind of in your boat before, and that's kind of where do you start? Gosh, isn't there someone who can share the experiences with you so we don't have to reinvent the wheel, and so we don't have to sort of feel those pain points, or at least eliminate some of those pain points. With any new program, though, of course, there are some pain points, and there are some learnings, and there are some things that, you know, we've fine-tuned and evolved as well too. But I am happy to answer questions, and I'm happy to share a little bit about our journey. We're certainly in a totally different place now than we were when we started, but I'll just talk really briefly kind of about that whole spectrum. So a little bit, thank you, Brittany, too, for sharing just a little bit about us. But so Iowa Specialty Hospitals and Clinics is 2 critical access hospitals. So if you can if you're kind of trying to judge if we're a reference that's kind of close to your size, each of those critical access hospitals is in very small communities with less than 5,000 population. And then our system actually has 9 clinics as well. We have a number of specialties kind of within our umbrella, but our total employee population is 700. So we're unique in the sense that we're small and we operate in small towns, and geographically we're at least 45 minutes to our closest tertiary center where we would refer our patients to. So that gives you a little idea of the mix of what we're working with as far as within our doors. I'm also going to share a little bit about the challenges that we faced kind of at the start, and then some of the benefits that we found kind of in the program, and then sort of where we are today. So that's kind of just a summary of what I'm going to talk about. So I've shared a little bit about those communities. Our clinics too are in small communities. We do span kind of that north central Iowa region. We do have some clinics in an urban area in Des Moines and Ames, and that is because we're also a bariatric center of excellence too. So those outreach clinics are in those areas as well. So challenges to kind of start when you're thinking about the program, and depending on where you are in your journey. For us, we started our journey with telemedicine at night, kind of for a number of reasons. One was because, and I'll specifically start talking about our Clarion facility. Our Clarion facility had providers retire, and then when we recruited a new inpatient hospitalist, that new inpatient hospitalist, and I'm sure you're experiencing this as well, came from a desire to provide amazing patient care during the day, but definitely wanted that work-life balance, as we all do. And he was amazing, and we wanted to retain him. So we looked at, what does that look like? Like, how else can we partner? Plus, there was only one of him, and how could we possibly serve all of our patients with just one provider, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week? So we couldn't kind of, we couldn't keep going with that kind of structure. Historically, prior to that piece, we had phenomenal family practice providers that were very seasoned and followed their patients when they were in the hospital. They were family practice providers who followed their patients 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. But that is not what, those of you who are out there recruiting and building programs, that's not the, and nor do we want that. We don't want our providers to have that 24 hours, 7 days a week coverage, because we want them to be their best here for our patients as well too. So again, we were looking at what that hybrid could possibly look like. And for us, it made more sense to look at it at nighttime. So when we started that journey for telemedicine, again, it was new to us. Our partner that we selected was a large company, and we were their pilot. So they had never actually they didn't have experience with telemedicine hospitalists, and they didn't have experience with the smaller hospitals. So that came with some unique challenges as well. So what we started with is not what we've ended with. It met our needs where we started, but it wasn't, as many of you are, I'm sure, aware, now we really treat our patients as a whole. We treat the family, we pride ourselves on knowing them, and that they're not just a number, and that their care follows, their nighttime care plan follows their daytime care plan, and those handoffs are seamless, and everybody's on the same page. So as with many pilot programs, it was a little disjointed, and so we had some work to do. So we kind of started evolving and thinking about what, if we could have the best case scenario, what would that look like? We felt like there was some opportunities with our technology, and we felt like there was some opportunities just with the relationship too. Our relationship, we had over 200 providers. So at any given night, any one of those 200 providers, depending on their call schedule, could be the one answering our needs. So so for us, that was a challenge. For some facilities, that probably is not a challenge. But for us, one of the things that drew us to Eagle Telemedicine was that small, unique group of individuals. So I'll talk a little bit about some of those other pieces, but I do think it's important as you're thinking about your programs that technology is going to change. So what does the physical piece look like that your patients are going to see, as well as what does that relationship look like for providers? So for me, as you can see on the slides, and I apologize, let me get back to where you are too, Brittany, so that we're on the same page. Sorry, I'll speak from that one, and then I'll have you maybe go back one slide for me if you could. Perfect. That one is just fine where you're at. So when we were talking about recruiting on-site providers and avoiding that burnout, there were a couple other factors that played in as far as scheduling and as far as what that relationship looked like previously. So I'll have you stay on this slide, and I'm going to talk about what the relationship looks like for us now. So with Eagle Telemedicine, our team is able to have those conversations with the providers, whether or not it's an important admission or whether or not it's just supportive care. So I will have you advance, Brittany, I'm sorry. Perfect. So for us, we credential 6 providers. And so at a nighttime, when we do an admission, our hospitalist covers from 5 p.m. to 5 a.m. And when they have that conversation that they need to communicate with the providers, they utilize what we call as Tiger text. So there's one of the factors that I appreciated when we were making the selection to Eagle Telemedicine was that they were neutral as far as the technology you choose, which is important because the technology changes. And when I say technology, I don't just mean the cart that comes in the room. I also mean how you communicate with your providers. So for us, we did not have a secure text messaging solution before we started this relationship. And then we do now. So they allowed us, they gave us some suggestions, but they allowed us to find which system worked best for us. We did land on Tiger Text. And I will tell you, as the time goes, we keep evaluating that to make sure that that's our best solution. But that's a big selling point. If you're trying to start a program, you want that flexibility that you can pick what works best for you. So say we have an admission comes in between 5 p.m. and 5 a.m. Our telemedicine at night handles those admissions 100% of the time. We communicate via Tiger Text to those individuals. And our response time is very quick. It's very detailed, it's secure, so you can include that information. I also think one of those selling factors that's important is that they're credentialed, so they also have access to the medical record. So they see what every doctor sees during the day as well too, so that information flows really, really smoothly. If you've been a nurse or if you are a nurse, you know how important it is to have a fast response. You also know for those nurses, the piece that gives me peace of mind, especially if it's a newer nurse, not a seasoned nurse, is that you're not waking a provider up at nighttime. So knowing that you can Tiger text even the smallest thing in the middle of the night is peace of mind for that new nurse, but it's also peace of mind for those who are recruiting and retaining. We have seasoned nurses, we have brand new nurses, and as much as you can educate and prepare people until they're in that real life and have that learning opportunity, that patient that they've never seen before, you really can appreciate the value of having that. If that provider can't be right there, having access to the provider without waking them up in the night is really important. I would also say too, on this slide, the fewer transfers, you know, for us geographically, as I mentioned, they're about 50 miles is the closest tertiary center that we would transfer patients to. And our Belmont facility does have a ICU. It's a small 2-bed ICU, and Clarion does not. We are a bariatric center of excellence in Belmont. And then our Clarion facility has OB, and it has a large volume of orthopedics. So we do see those surgical patients, and our volume though does vary. So we can have a night census of 1, we could have a night census of 20. So I can appreciate those of you who are those smaller facilities too, that have to try to balance what that magic number is. But for us, again, like I mentioned, we wanted that focus to be treating everyone. So whether that's a husband whose wife is at home with Parkinson's and he's hospitalized, he wants to stay at home. Or if it's single mom and she's got to coordinate her kids, like transfers for them are a big deal. So giving the ability to keep more patients home and feeling really good about the care that they provide was another huge benefit that we found with telemedicine. I'll have you go ahead, Brittany, and thank you. So on this slide, this is kind of a little deceiving. We started our journey, I said, with Clarion in 2018, and we didn't do that necessarily intentionally for the same reasons that we decided in the end. You know, we certainly could have gone with both hospitals at the same time, but for Belmont had a few providers that were getting ready to transition to retirement, which was wonderful for them, but they still utilize that model where they followed their patients, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So we had that luxury of kind of holding off on them for a little bit. But also when you see admissions per month, if you're thinking, oh my gosh, they hardly have a census at all. No, these are true admissions from 5 p.m. to 5 a.m. because I mentioned that's the time that we selected to have that coverage. So this is, nobody's started in the ER, nobody's anything. This is someone who's come into the ER after 5 p.m. and then needs an admission, and they do the entire admission. So there are options out there, I know, for a hybrid version and not. I'll tell you, our original telemedicine pilot that we did, it was a hybrid. And for billing, it was messy. And for teen handoff, it was messy. And one of the strengths with the Eagle Telemedicine program is with that small group of providers, they do have that great communication. There is a handoff every single day with that provider covering that patient. So they know, like, hey, I'm watching these following things, and this is what I'm kind of thinking, and this is kind of what the plan is for tomorrow. So it's not that like surprise in the morning. Then when our daytime provider comes on, it's not like, oh my gosh, they completely changed the course of treatment for this patient. Everyone is kind of on that same page, which offers amazing continuity of care for our patients. And it really makes that communication streamlined. Tiger text is how our providers communicate back and forth as well too. And then when needed, if it is a true admission, that's when we bring in that telemedicine cart. For Belmont, you can see that we started with Belmont in 2019, and Belmont's volume is a little smaller than Clarion's, but that is really attributed to the size of the communities too. And for Belmont, since I mentioned we were a bariatric center of excellence, the way that pathway works is they actually do go home kind of that following day. So Belmont can have, regular patients. They can have surgical patients too, but that's where that kind of divide is. Now I'll tell you, it's our same nursing team and it's our same provider mix too. So it's nice that it's also our same credentialed group of Eagle Telemedicine providers too. So the nurses are comfortable with the equipment. We use the same equipment at both sites. So we try to keep that. And I mentioned, that we learned some things with onboarding as well too. Same with the providers, our nurses, we've kind of refined what that looks like too. So now it's incorporated as part of their orientation package. And then we use that technology now in other things. COVID, thank you for helping us with that, but sort of forced everyone into telemedicine. Though we were doing it previously, and I shouldn't say forced, we're really leveraging it because it is best practice for us to reach our patients where they need it most. And now that we have a solid nighttime telemedicine program too, it's just allowed us to get our feelers out into a lot of other areas when it comes to telemedicine. When I transition now to talk a little bit about technology, for us, when we started, it was an iPad on a stick is what we called it. It worked to meet our needs. So if you are thinking about it and you have a challenge with finances and you're thinking, oh my gosh, all we have is an iPad, it will work. It will work to get you started, but it is so much better if you can look at alternative funding, which there's tons of alternative funds out there. We did apply for a grant and we're graciously rewarded one. So we had some additional funds to do that. But the difference we selected the Global Med as our partner for that technology. The difference between a larger screen and a 360-degree camera and a Bluetooth stethoscope does really make a difference, because for our nurse at the bedside, trying to manage up that small iPad to the patients, it was just a challenge. It's not that the communication wasn't there, and it's not that those pieces couldn't happen, but for what we wanted as an experience for our patients, the larger cart really took it to the next level. I'm gonna go ahead and advance on to the next one too. I wanna talk a little bit about that support for nursing. Now, I know that we're all experiencing the shortage with nursing, as well as with the providers, certainly. But when I say that support, it's really been beneficial for us too, from a recruitment standpoint, because, and I know we're a little unique from a small critical access standpoint, because we do offer, quite a few specialties that some critical access hospitals our side don't have that luxury, but we do run the same risk as everybody else. And how do we recruit into our small communities? Because our communities are small and they don't offer the great things that just 50 miles away offer. So for us, having the ability to keep sicker patients allows our nurses to hone in and keep their acute care skills, helps them keep them, but it also, for the newer nurse, helps them develop them. But as we all know, nighttime nursing is sometimes where our brand new grads go, and that can be a scary time. And I talked about that tiger text and how that communication can occur at nighttime, but also that ability where if they just don't feel like something is right with the patient, the Eagle Telemedicine hospitalist can hop on and do that video consultation too. So you have those tools. So even though the doctor is not at the bedside, it's almost better than having the doctor at the bedside, because it's a high definition camera. It's a Bluetooth stethoscope that has unbelievable sound quality. And it kind of just takes away all that distractions. You're not worried about the travel time. You're not worried about, you woke up Dr. Smith from a 2 a.m. at 2 in the morning, and he's got surgery at 5 a.m. or whatever the case is. It just takes away those extra things. So I really feel like the nurses, whether they're seasoned or whether they're brand new, they really feel supported in this environment. And I'm grateful for that, from a recruiting standpoint, from a retention standpoint, but most importantly, for the overall care of the patient too. Fewer transfers. I talked a little bit about that. And, for us, for our patients are our neighbors. There are parents, there are brothers or sisters, our teachers. And so if we can keep them in that close knit environment and provide them that same level of coverage, that's ideal. In a small critical access hospital, that's super important. But also just from a resources standpoint, from a business sense, sometimes, now we have fantastic relationships with our tertiary centers, and so we frequently do get our patients back. But depending on your region, sometimes we know that it is just easier for care coordination if the patient is transferred to then handle all that care there and then come back. Well, sometimes that's weeks later that they're coming back, and then odds are they might not be coming back to your community to get that care. And that I know is a reality in a lot of regions. So for us, keeping them here and allowing them that ability to be supported by their families is really important. And I'll tell you too, for us, we were a COVID hospital, so we kept COVID patients. We had ICU COVID patients. And so, you know, we all know with the visitor restrictions and the care and those things, that sense of knowing that we have nighttime specialists that can handle that care, and knowing that we weren't providing our patients a disservice by keeping them here, you know, that was a great testament too. And granted, it was years after we started the initial journey. It really proved that we were very grateful that we had that robust system in place. And it also allowed us to, you know, once you're comfortable with the nighttime hospitalist, it's amazing then what transpires next. You know, for us, that evolution then was sometimes during COVID, our daytime providers, maybe they were out due to COVID exposure, or maybe, you know, we had everyone in that was on our inpatient unit, which occurred sometimes in Belmont, you know, all 18 patients were COVID patients. And so we were decreasing traffic as much as possible. So we did virtual rounding during the daytime with our daytime providers too. So it, you know, once you kind of reach that comfort level within telemedicine, you do really realize that you can provide amazing care for your patients when they need it most, regardless of where they're located. I'll talk a little bit about results. You know, I talked a little bit about technology, and I think, you know, if you're trying to just decide, or maybe you have a program and you want to make sure your program is the best, you really just need to plan. You need to plan that technology is an expense. And I mentioned that there's alternative funds out there. Even if we had not received a grant, in order for our program to be successful, we have to plan that there'll be changes. There'll be changes in the camera, there'll be changes in the stethoscope. It's just like buying a car. You know, you buy your car and then 5 minutes down the road, you realize somebody else just released the best car ever. It's like that with technology too. But I will tell you that if you land on a robust platform, and there are a handful of them out there too that do a great job, everyone has really stepped up in the last couple of years to provide really high quality products to make this a reality. It is worth the investment, but it is an investment that will keep coming down the road that we need to keep thinking about. That fast response time I mentioned, our average is less than a minute response time with Tiger Text. I don't know about your facilities, but if you're trying to, it probably takes you longer to find the provider's phone number than it does to even get a hold of the provider. But if you think about not having a secure text messaging option in the middle of the night, you're finding the phone number, you're calling the provider, or it's going to a call service, or you're leaving them a message and you're waiting for them to return your call back, all in the middle of the night. I love that Eagle Telemedicine also gives us a reporting structure, so we can actually see when the admissions happen. We can watch those trends. We can see when the Tiger Text messages happen, which I am constantly sharing that information because I find it fascinating, but I also find it really important from a nursing standpoint. I am a nurse by trade, and most of our communication occurs at like 11 p.m., 1 a.m., 3 a.m. That just would not happen. If you did not have a provider that was dedicated to your facility in the middle of the night, that people would be waiting. I mean, for one thing, because if you're waking them up in the middle of the night, you're going to wait till you don't have anything else to ask them. But the reality of that is, though, it can be delay of care to patients. It also can, you know, something else can occur. Right now, we have the peace of mind that our nurses can ask any question, even a silly question, at any time of the night. If you're a facility who doesn't have that, you run that risk of, it might be a silly question, so I'm not going to ask. And then maybe they gave a med they shouldn't have given, or maybe they didn't do something that they should have done in enough time to make a difference in the impact that patient care. So that fast response time just has tons of value to us. Physician satisfaction, I talked very briefly about the fact that we use this for a recruiting retention tool, but providers are in a national shortage as well too. And if you're trying to recruit to a small town and it's someone who didn't grow up there or doesn't have friends who grew up there, it is a challenge. So if you can market the fact that they don't have nighttime coverage and that they have a partner in their care that's credentialed and is part of their team, that's a huge recruiting benefit. And I will tell you too, that they do participate They participate in our hospital performance improvement. They're monitoring things. If we're asking them to monitor things, they're in the electronic medical record. The night team knows them by name. They know the night nurses by name. So it is like having a daytime rounding provider. And I know sometimes that's scary to think about going outside your walls to provide that care at night, but we've been incredibly satisfied from that standpoint as well. I will also tell you too, you worry about what happens if you get, a provider that maybe doesn't fit your mold. Culture is very important to us at Iowa Specialty Hospital, and we have felt very supported in that. Eagle Telemedicine has been very good about including us in the credentialing of their providers. If there's a new provider to the team, we get a full bio. The whole team gets to meet them virtually. So I feel like that process is really a great one. Also, I didn't speak about this earlier, but as the startup package, I think for me, that was really impressive too. It's a very organized startup and it's very intense. I remember when I received the giant packet that they wanted me to fill out, but it was all about our hospital and our providers and our departments. And now that I've been a partner with them for so long, I realize that that's so important. They take that relationship very seriously. It's very similar to how we would onboard a brand new provider internally, only telemedicine also does it. Eagle Telemedicine has that same emphasis to make sure that their providers have everything they need to be successful. So those nighttime providers know our tertiary centers, they know the contact information, they know how to transfer a patient, and they are logging in from a variety of places. I have been on a number of meetings with one of the providers from Eagle Telemedicine who was very willing to just hop on for a variety of reasons. And the time that we had the governor here visiting, she's in Paris, and that's just a neat thing, like to think about, like your providers providing amazing care from Paris. So I just think sometimes those are fun things too that we take for granted. I talked already about, it's definitely a stronger, more confident nursing team. And I talked about the dedicated personal hospitalist and improved care. I would say, our patients always got really great care, but I do feel like there's an improvement in our care because that continuity that I talked about. Everybody's on the same page. Everybody's in the same medical record. Everybody's having that handoff at nighttime, that handoff in the morning. Everybody's working that same direction for the patients. So I would say that we have seen an improvement in care. We're able to retain some higher acuity patients, and we're able to have fewer transfers, which really increases our patient satisfaction too. And from a nursing satisfaction too, if your nurses are happy, I think your care is better too. And that's just a reality. I want to transition though too into when we were making that decision about who to connect with next. We looked at a couple different scenarios, and some of the things that made us consider Eagle Telemedicine was their presence across the country. So when you're starting out, you want to pick a program too that is robust and that people have done it before. Now, I will tell you that no two hospitals are the same. We even experience that in our own system. Each of our clinics is different. Each of our hospitals is different. Each of the communities we serve are different. And Eagle Telemedicine takes that into account, which was important to us. We really needed it to be tailored, unique to the situations and the types of patients that we saw at each of our locations. And they were able to provide that. And I think that's probably because of their presence across the country in so many different states. Every state has a different billing rule. Every state has, all kinds of things that you have to factor in. So we were very grateful of that. The other piece that we were grateful for is not everybody's ready to jump into multiple specialties. For us, we were specifically looking for telemedicine at nighttime. Like that was our sole goal, and it met our goal, and exceeded our goal. But the other thing that we chose was we have future visions, and is there a company out there that can meet those future goals as well in regard to telemedicine specialties that maybe we didn't even realize we needed, and as you can see here on this slide, there are a lot of other options that you can grow into. Or, you know, maybe you have nighttime coverage and you don't need to worry about it. Maybe there's a different niche that you're looking for as far as telemedicine. And, you know, telemedicine, if COVID taught us anything, it really is here to stay. And it is going to continue to grow. And it is our job, I think, as healthcare providers and as good stewards and as people planning and making decisions for our hospitals to, it's not really when, it's not really if you're going to expand telemedicine in your hospitals, but it's really when and which one makes the most sense to do now, because we owe that to our patients to keep pace with technology. And I really do believe that, you know, telemedicine is here to stay. But I'm grateful that we've had that opportunity and that we were able to navigate COVID and that we were able to bring our program, you know, even further on with telemedicine. And I'm happy to be a resource because I don't want to sugarcoat it. You know, there are challenges and questions and expenses involved in it, but it really has over the years. And like I mentioned, we started in 2017, you know, we've really been incredibly grateful that we have this service, and it has just continued to grow, and the offshoots in a lot of different areas too. So we're very pleased with our relationship, and I'm happy to be a resource if there are specific questions too that anybody might have.